Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, wherever you're listening to us. Welcome to the inService podcast. My name is Gerardo Pelayo. I'm the Vice President of Research and Advisory at Service Council. And I want to welcome you all to a very exciting conversation that we're going to have today called From Z to A, Innovative Thinking to Shift Left. I'm going to be joined by Sidney Lara, who's Service Principal at Aquant today for that conversation. Sidney, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Gerardo. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Great. So very important topic. We hear a lot about service innovation and how organizations are rethinking their path going forward, adapting to the customer experiences, increasing the intelligence, trying to make this move from reactive to being predictive and proactive around those decisions. But one common element that we keep hearing there is I have more data than the one that I'm taking advantage of, and sometimes getting overwhelmed in the process. So we're gonna deep dive into this, learn a couple of best practices, see what our community is doing well, and the lessons learned. Before we do that, and we get to know Sydney, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. So we're live as always in the podcast and for our LinkedIn live community. We see you, we hear you. Feel free to comment. We encourage your comments. Make this an interactive conversation. Whether you're asking to expand on some of it, you disagree, you have additional thoughts on that. It all adds to the conversation. And this podcast is also going to be recorded, available through the different streaming platforms as we typically do. And so I'll remind everybody of that at the very end. So with that out of the way, Sydney, you and I have met before. We've had a chance to collaborate, but some of our audience may not be that familiar with you. Do you mind just providing a short introduction about yourself? What do you do at Aquant?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Gerardo. Yeah. Sidney Lara, as you said. First and foremost, father, husband of a family of three growing boys, making me old. Started off in my field in career service. Gerardo, first job was a field service technician. Eventually found my way into manufacturing operations and then back into field service. In my last stint, Gerardo, I was responsible for North America service. Uniquely running a party, service party, a third party. For those listening, familiar with leveraging third party, it's a bit of a challenge, right? And in my role, I was trying to optimize my service execution, and I was looking for technology to help offset the variability that happens with service execution. Tougher with a third party, typically because they're not providing service just for you, but maybe the competition and typically a lot of other products. So I was really trying to look at a solution that would help optimize my service operations. And I was an early adopter of Aquant. I used to be a former customer of Aquant. And what I loved about Aquant was them being in the forefront of the AI technology. And it allowed me to roll out a platform to my third-party network that would allow for consistency of service delivery. So that being said, who we are, I'm now with Aquant almost 4 years. And for those not familiar with Aquant, we are an AI software company that does just kind of what I was looking for. We digest historic service information, allow organizations to look at their information in a very palatable way, but most importantly, augmenting those service organizations with technology such as AI to improve not only customer satisfaction, service efficiencies, but bottom line improvements as well. So thanks for having me. I think you hit the mute there. There we go.
Yes, and thank you, Sydney. And the thing is, I am getting some feedback from our LinkedIn audience that the podcast hasn't started over there. So we may have to do a quick introduction for everybody again. Let me see if. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, everybody. For our LinkedIn audience that is just joining, we had a little bit of a glitch there getting the podcast started, but we're happy um, to have you join us. My name is Gerardo Pelayo. I'm the Vice President of Research and Advisory at Service Council, and I want to welcome you to today's inService podcast with Sidney Lara. He's the Service Principal from Aquant. Sidney, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thanks. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great, Sydney. For today, we're going to be talking about a very interesting theme from Z2A, innovative thinking to shift left. And we see service organizations looking about service innovation and how to make the shift from being proactive, from being reactive to being predictive in what the expectations are and tackling those in a proactive manner. We see the rethinking of the commercial models, the accumulation and availability of more data, more technology. But a common challenge that we're hearing, and we heard a lot of that in the Smarter Service Executive Symposium that we just had last week, is organizations having more data than the one that they're able to take advantage of right now. So we're gonna deep dive into this very interesting topic, get the insights, lessons learned, success stories from Sydney as we engage. But before we do that, let me do a little bit of housekeeping. The podcast is live, and we see your comments. So for our LinkedIn audience, we always like to keep this interactive. Please, we welcome your questions, your incremental thoughts to the conversation. Even if you disagree with something, it all adds to the maturity and the value that we're seeing here. And the podcast is recorded. It's going to be available after we're done. We're going to post it in all of your favorite streaming platforms. Without further ado, though, let us dip right in. And Sydney, I know we've had a chance to collaborate before, but some of our audience may not be that familiar with you. Do you mind giving an introduction about yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Gerardo. Yes, Sidney Lara, first and foremost, father and husband of three wonderful boys and a wonderful wife, right? Started my career off, Gerardo, in field service, and here I am still with field service, right? As a field technician. Throughout my career, I landed some different roles, some leading manufacturing operations, but eventually found myself back into field service. In my last tenure, I was responsible for North America service for a German manufacturer, and was really trying to optimize my service execution, and was in the forefront of looking at technology, right? What technologies are out there that would allow me to enable my partners in a third-party world to have tools to execute a constant service. So I was a former customer of Aquant, early adopter, looking at technology that would allow my team to execute on a consistent level. So it's been about 4 years now, Gerardo, that I joined Aquant as somewhat of a brand ambassador. As you can see, I'm excited to talk about them, knowing that it's a technology really that allows organizations to really upscale their services when it comes to technology. So happy to be here. For those not familiar with Aquant, we are an AI company that really enables organizations to digest historical service information, make it palatable so that service leaders can understand where the opportunities exist within their operations. But more importantly, how do we augment where we see opportunity with that data by enabling the doers, the executors, the technicians to have tools in their hands, such as Service Copilot, to enable them to provide better services, like I was looking for 4 years ago. So, thanks for having me.
Outstanding. Thank you, and thank you for that introduction about the interaction of Aquant as well with your customers. And I actually want to leverage a little bit of that to get us started, because as I was saying last week, we were in Chicago for our Smarter Services Executive Symposium. This is our largest event of the year. We had over 400 participants this year.
Yes.
It's been our largest since. And one of the things that made this year such a success was the quality of the breakout sessions. And Aquant led three of those sessions, one each day, and they speak very closely to the topic that we have at hand. So I'd like to leverage that. Particularly the first of those sessions, there was Sarah Smith. She's from Waters Corporation, and Ron Cruz as well from Mercedes-Benz high power charging. Very different industries, and yet both of them were commenting on the challenge from data overload. And part of the conversation led to, well, does AI have a role to play within that, within mitigating this feeling of being overwhelmed by data? So do you mind commenting on that, perhaps a little bit of what you heard from that conversation?
Absolutely. Yeah, information overload could be daunting, right? I think that's kind of the message, rare. And how do organizations, are they ready? We often hear, are you ready to take this journey of transformation? And everyone has data, right? And there's those that have great data and those that not such great data. And it becomes very important to your question, Gerardo. How do you take the journey without getting overburdened, overwhelmed with so much information? I think it's a great talking point that when you think about adopting new technology into your organization, especially in this new age of AI, it's very important that organizations, I would say, assign, and you probably heard that if you're at the symposium, ownership, right? There's a change management element to bringing on new technologies. I think that's often underlooked. And what I mean by that is change management, it's going to require change management. It's a new way of doing things. And I think it's critically important for organizations to assign ownership. That might be a single point person. It could be, depending on the organization, multiple people that are going to be responsible for the implementation of this new technology. And not just the implementation, but the influence, the positive messaging behind what it can do for the business, and be held accountable to the change management aspect of it. So I think it's important not to be overburdened, to assign ownership, to make sure that you're tracking what you wanted to get out of the project through the process, making sure that you have a good source of foundation, knowledge management system in place, and then, of course, the curation and the refreshing of that data. So I think if you put the right pillars in place, ownership, right knowledge, foundational base background, and then the obviously refreshing of the data in the background, it could lead you on the path of success.
I like that answer. Part of it is the interrelationship that you're describing across these different elements, right?
Yep.
That was a theme in the conference as well, when a lot of these efforts, initiatives are managed in silos, and really that streamlining of it's not just analytics or it's not just data, but what you described is a business decision making process that is getting streamlined. So great insights over there.
Yeah, and one thing that just
Yes.
triggered, Gerardo, sorry, is, leveraging. I think Sarah said this in the session. Leveraging internal expertise, right? So we talked about assigning ownership, but often, sometimes you buy a product for your technology, and then you have consultants come in to try to help you roll out and deploy. Could work for organizations, but I think there's a greater benefit, which was brought up at the council, which was leveraging the internal expertise. There are probably people in your organization who are willing, have experience, or want to do it. And what not a better way of deploying something when you have your internal stakeholders fully vested, as opposed to an outside consultant. Not to say it's wrong, but I think there's a benefit of using and leveraging internal expertise.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's also a great segue to the next session, because the theme of the event was human connected digital journeys. And in another one of your sessions, Joe Lang from Comfort Systems USA was moderating that. The part of the conversation led to, well, what is the role that people play within this whole change management, within these new possibilities that are in front of us? And so the question that I would ask you is, are there any guidelines that that you would recommend on how to approach the integration of AI with the people to maintain that human element in the organization?
Absolutely, and it's a great question, Gerardo. I think that often you have innovators, forward thought thinkers in a business that are looking for the next breakthrough technology to help augment or improve their services. And often, because it's a great idea, doesn't mean it's going to be deployed well, right? And that human element of involving others is so critically important. So when you ask the question of recommendations, it's getting the frontline involved. I can't say it enough from a service perspective. The frontline users, the technicians are going to be using it, should have a tremendous seat at the table when it comes to how are we going to deploy? What's the best way to deploy? What are the best way to use it in the field? If you miss that step, I think you're missing a critical step, right? There's going to be others involved, of course, but I think for successful acceptance and rollout, it's getting the frontline users involved from the beginning.
Yeah, and to get us grounded on that, and if I may double click, I wonder if you've seen any examples, or are there any ideal use cases where AI is elevating the service teams, but without losing that human touch?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think one thing I skipped, but related to your question, is that involvement of service teams. What's important for the audience to understand, we're all in this AI world. We're all talking chat GBT or some form of it, right? And it's only as good as the data it's provided, right? So we talk in our world of personalized AI, right? So the difference between general AI and personal AI, where we differentiate, is that we're going to take your data, but that data needs to be cleansed, right? Or be reviewed, if you will, through service matter expertise. And I think there's big leverage and momentum that when you bring those SMEs into the process of rollout, you're not only validating or optimizing that output of that data, it shows promise, not only of the involvement that those technicians say, I'm involved in the output of the benefit of the quality of the results. But I think that's the biggest thing I'd like to point out. It's when you involve these SMEs, sometimes organizations will say this from experience, you may have a bad perception that this may eliminate my value or eliminate my job in the future. And I think it's very important to get over that hump very quickly. And technicians, these SMEs that we use in the process, right, they're often burdened by phone a friend, right? They may be working on a critical operation being disrupted by phone a friend, right? Likewise, when someone's challenged with a tough issue in the field, they may be phoning a friend or the contact center. What happens when you're phoning the contact center? They're not answering the customer call, right? So I think there's tremendous opportunity to leverage that SME information to get that leverage you talk about out of the gate when it comes to launching a product.
Yeah, and to complement that answer, so one of the things I heard in passing in one of those sessions was the role that people can play in preparing that data in a better way, right? The thumbs up, thumbs down, those feedback mechanisms that improve the foundation. I think Sarah Rose might have mentioned some of that. The other point that I would like to raise, more like a warning flag on this, is that some organizations don't seem to be doing enough in proactively involving their teams, their field service teams in particular, in order to strengthen that data foundation. We have our Voice of the Field Service Engineer survey summary findings coming up next week on Tuesday, and we still see that 1 in 3 engineers do not agree that their organization makes it easy for them to capture the customer feedback, to capture opportunities for innovation. So all of this starts to become part of the incremental data that could be used. Having said that, let's take a step back, and with the data that we already have, there's this already the feeling of it's too much, it's more than the one I'm taking advantage of. And while over the years, one catchphrase has been paralysis by analysis. One of the new trends that we're sensing is this paralysis by preparation. Not as catchy, but very relevant. Nevertheless, Joe Lang touched on that as well, and the question is: are organizations sometimes waiting too long when they prepare their data as they try to embark on these digital transformation journeys? And how really the question is, how should organizations think about finding the right balance between preparing their data and jumping into the benefits that AI, for example, can bring into the picture?
Yeah, great question. And I'm fortunate to be in the position to deal with multiple customers to kind of see their journey, right? And what happens often, going back to that innovator within the business, right? We're going to buy this product and they're going to be asking soon, what's the ROI on the implementation of this product, right? And to your point, there's a fine balance of being perfectly prepared with expense of time, or taking what I would say a very 80-20 approach to rollout. And what I mean by that is, if you have a very diversified product portfolio, it could take you a long time to get everything ready to deploy. As opposed to what Joe said and you said here, if you took a portion, my most installed product, we know that's the one we service the most. And let's start by ensuring that the quality, training, implementation of that is optimized. And let's roll that out, because when we roll that out, we're not waiting for all the other products in the portfolio to be up and ready. And now we're getting evidence of what we've brought into our business, and we got evidence of the tool and its benefits. That to me becomes a very critical, influential way of influencing the business, why we need to do more of this, right? So yes, I think I'm completely in line with Joe. Don't wait for perfection. Look at your business and see what can we do to monetize or optimize the value quickly out of the gate, and make a smart strategic decision to say, we will get there over time, but where do we start today to optimize the value?
Yeah, and I think it's very much like this. So as you get good answers that reveal some interesting questions, and the same happens with the data as you start working through it, taking actions on the initial insights. So we often talk about it's a journey. That's what
For
being
sure.
a journey means. That you actually have to get started. You have to start walking at some point.
Yeah, well said,
And
Gerardo. A journey is a great way to say it. It's not overnight. It's a journey, and prepare a plan so you plan out a journey, right? And make it work. Yeah.
yeah. So now in service, we like interesting journeys, and part of what makes that interesting is the complexity. As we start this shift or a bigger focus on omni-channel experiences.
Yeah.
And I bring that up because we're not only seeing this gap in the back office or in the field. We had our state of remote support survey earlier in the year, and the challenges that are being faced are very similar. 28% of remote support leaders identified the inability to easily consume their own knowledge base as the main source for their challenges. And and so because this data will need to be consumed by different personas, the field, the remote support, one asks the question: are there some foundational elements that, in your experience across industries, across the clients, are there elements that tend to be often overlooked or not given the importance that they should, as organizations try to manage this omni-channel strategy?
Yes, Gerardo. I mean, the omni-channel could be so multifaceted, multi-fingered, right? So many elements involved. But I think the ones that are often overlooked as critical, right, is what I talked about, is that curation, refreshing or recurating the database, right? Making sure that it's relevant. The governance of that information within an organization, again, in some fields, is very, very important, right? So I think those are not thought about. Sometimes we think about the deployment of the technology to offset and augment, but what's going on behind the scenes to make sure that the data is relevant, current, and fresh is sometimes not considered. We hear it more from our customers more and more to this day. How do we ensure that we keep it up to date for those concerns? I think are a big part of it. But I also believe that the training piece is ultimately critical for the technicians and the organizations to have. If you don't train well and help sell the value of the benefit of the organization, the acceptance within the organization will be minimized. So I think that's the employee involvement, as we talked about, the engagement, their training is important. And again, another one of the curation of the data, keeping it fresh.
Yes, and a comment on that last point with training. One of the insights that we're seeing from this voice of the field service this year is that the quality of training is not growing at the same speed as the perceived demands from the customers, demands from management, the knowledge that is required. So in general, perception is, has it gotten better? Yes, but there's a 30% gap between the quality of the training and the expectations that the technicians see. So that just reinforces your point. And I sometimes make the joke at home, uh, not to raving success, that just because there's healthy food in the pantry doesn't mean that I'm going to be willing or able to eat it. And something similar can happen with the data, as you've been talking about. How do we curate it? How do we build this this strong foundation? There's still the part about how is it going to get consumed. For the field service engineers, for 6 years straight, the paperwork and admin had been the number one dislike for technicians. And this year, for the first time, by less than 1%, but still losing the number one throne, we see the time spent looking for information being the biggest pain point for technicians. So assuming we take this better practices that you've been sharing and have this curated knowledge base investment going, what can be done in order to simplify this process so that the data gets utilized in a more seamless, easier to consume manner for those that need it?
Yeah, it's take advantage of what's available now, right? We have a product called Service Copilot, right? And
Mhm.
it solves that exact problem, that concern of the voice of the technician, right? Having access to data immediately. And technology is solving that today for us, right? So I think it's very important, right? I'm going to go back and date myself a little bit from getting out of a training class with a big, 3-ring binder of documentation and kept in the van to eventually getting on your phone. Regardless, those ways were ways of improving, but today there is real technology that allows organizations to digest all that information technicians are looking for, and essentially in the snap of a finger or a simple question, give them that answer specifically to what they want without shifting through pages, without shifting to a knowledge article, specific to that index of that information that they need. And I think that's a tremendous ability, not for the morale of the technicians only, right? Imagine being, as technicians often feel, I'm alone on an island in the field working by myself. And sometimes feel a little bit, you know, not as confident when you have to phone a friend or have to walk away from a piece of equipment because you don't know the answer. And allowing this technology to have all that information you have in your business to be answered in a question through something like Copilot is a tremendous opportunity to alleviate those past concerns by enabling your team to have this type of technology in their hand.
Yes, and these new approaches speak directly to uh, what I consider a transformation in the challenges that the frontline faces. It used to be we don't have the right data or we don't have the complete data. In the last years and definitely months, the complaint is more the right data is there. I'm sure of it, but there's so much noise around it, and being able to get the right data, but only the right data is where I believe AI and mechanisms like Copilot can play a big role, definitely, as the field
Absolutely.
gets engaged.
For sure.
So moving in a slightly different direction, every now and then I enjoy this outside the box thinking, and there's typically an assumption that we want to create seamless processes. You're gonna have a very hard time arguing against that. That the experience needs to be seamless, and we want to simplify and all. And yet, I was reading about these examples in retail industry where cart abandonment is at 72%, and that would appear to justify the intent to go towards seamless experiences. But what they're doing, some innovators in the area, is actually building friction into specific parts of the process to improve the experience of everybody involved. For example, to identify the customers to segregate the customers that are interested in the product versus those that are not, to prevent fraud on credit cards, to prevent people from ordering the wrong size in their t-shirt or their pants because it's all too easy, too quickly, too fast. And and then, while you want to prevent cart abandonment, the logic in retail is you also want to prevent the returns that come from wrong experiences that took place. And that is not too far away from the general mindset that we want to achieve in Shift Left. So, with this long but perhaps necessary introduction about friction
Friction.
by design, can you think of any examples where it might make sense, or where you've started to see this applied in the service world?
Yeah, you bring up a very interesting point, Gerardo, right? What you're basically saying is, how do we get ahead and understand you said earlier, thumbs up, thumbs down, if you will, something like that. How do we get leading indicators, if you will, of the customer experience or the technician experience, right? So that you're not looking at it in the past, but you have some type of feedback mechanism that says the experience was expected or not as expected, I think is where you're going. So I think it's a great provocative question to be thinking about as a service leader. Is your system allowing for that friction up front, right? May not be what you want to hear, but that the fact that you got that feedback that it didn't satisfy the needs of that technician is great information to know, right? Because now that you know it didn't serve their need in front of a piece of equipment, you can now look back and say, what do I need to do the next time my technician encounters this, that I give them the right information? To me, that's a feedback loop that's needs to be embraced to have the optimal system.
Yeah, and as you were talking about that, one example that came to mind is inService parts. So, how do organizations connect the data from the as installed versus as maintained, to make sure that when they're sending out a replacement part to the technician, to the customer, that it is not just sent quickly, but also that it is the right part. And
Yep.
sometimes you may want to ask an additional question. You may want to collect an image of the asset and do a validation. So this type of examples add a little bit of friction, but have the potential of improving the overall experience by preventing rework, by preventing materials to go back and forth in the supply chain, warranty offerings, triaging. Might be some other examples where we could see this friction by design starting to get deployed in
Absolutely.
organizations. And
Absolutely.
the tricky thing before moving on is, if we just add friction by following our gut, that's going to be a very risky proposition. So we go back to having the right uh, data, easily accessible, easily consumable, to inform this type of initiatives.
Yeah, data needs to be your friend for sure to make wise decisions. Absolutely.
Good. So you also in your last comment you were also talking about indicators and leading and lagging indicators. Another big topic that we heard during the symposium, we actually revealed our service index as a service maturity metric that looks across experiences from the customer experience, employee experience, business continuity. And one of the warning signs that we observed from the initial results on the self-assessment for this service index is the prevalence of lagging indicators to inform the future. I I was reading in another article that following this mindset is a little bit like driving by only looking at your rearview mirror.
Yep.
Even if you have all the data, it's data about the past, and yet it's not straightforward. It's not so easy to just shift entirely towards leading indicators. And the first question is, should we? Do you? What have you seen with your partners? Is there a difference in performance from those that are using leading indicators with higher frequency than those who rely mostly on lagging?
Fantastic question again, Gerardo. I think service, we tend to historically be looking at it, like you said, in the rearview mirror. But there are ways that we just talked about to capture leading indicators, right? And I think the right answer is a balance of both, right? A good organization can't ignore one or the other. They need to have a good balance of both, right? And I think when you have a balance of both, right, it really shows the maturity of an organization when it comes to continuous improvement, right? It's not what we've done in the past what we're going to fix, but what can we do as leading indicators, right? We talk about IoT, a big thing many years ago, right? What are those leading indicators we can build into our equipment that would allow us to predict a service failure before it happens, right? A great mindset to have in an organization. What are those things that we're capturing from field service events that might be an indication of a quality failure of a part that might be being deployed into the field, right? So I think you have to have a balance of both because there's real-time evidence of things that you can avoid by having those feedback mechanisms as leading indicators. But there's also, I got to look at what I've done historically, and I know there's opportunity in the past that I need to fix as well. So I think it's a mixture of both, Gerardo, to really optimize and not exclude one or the other.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that I've observed for that is keeping organizations from making that move is the lack of trust, especially on the leading indicators, and that's where I believe it all starts to get connected. If you have a foundation that the people have not been part of creating, that they're not aware of its potential, then the predictions that come out of that, they might be there, they might be getting published, they're not really going to get utilized that scale across the organization. I don't know if you have any similar thoughts or perhaps any any observations with a client where you've seen something like this.
No, but I agree. I agree with the sentiment you provided. Yeah.
Yeah, and and another part before moving away from these indicators is we tend to focus them around the customer experience, and there's a reason for that, right? That's the main purpose of service to deliver that experience to them. But there's also the component of who's delivering that experience to the customer, and are we understanding? Are we paying the same level of attention, of rigor? Are we leveraging the tools at hand in order to increase the performance and the experience of our employees of the frontline? John, quotes. I believe it's from Chick-fil-A that they mentioned that the customer experience is the overflow of the employee experience, and all of this contrasts with what we see in terms of the utilization of indicators. While 62% of organizations are using mostly lagging indicators for the customer experience,
Mhm.
that that is even more one-sided for the employee experience. 75% of organizations work either exclusively or mostly on lagging indicators. None of the organizations that we heard um, are using leading indicators more than two-thirds of the time. So do you, do you see opportunities there from data AI applications on reimagining the frontline experience to have a positive effect on shift left?
Yeah, and I'm probably going to send some shockwaves on my answer here because it's a great question. And I think when you talk about the acceptance and adaptation, implementation of this type of technology, we said it a little bit earlier, has sometimes a negative stigma to it. It devalues my value within the organization. It's going to eliminate my job. But what we don't talk about is the mental wellness of our technicians, right? And how it can have a positive value benefit to to the frontline technician. How are we capturing that sentiment of those technicians? And despite the technologies there to optimize services, I think leaders really need to rethink about what that benefit can really bring to an organization. What do I mean by that? If this technology can allow technicians to do their jobs faster, does it necessarily mean you want them to do more jobs per day? Think about what you hear in field service. As a technician, I'm never able to make it home on time because I had a fire, at the end of the day. I'm never able to pick up my child from school or make it to their sporting event, right? And imagine having all organizations are looking to maximize their service execution. Imagine having a more predictable way to service to allow a little more breathing. So now I'm going to go into utilization, sending the shockwaves. A lot of organizations may have a target set for utilization of their technicians. Now you bring in technology to augment it to make them be a more efficient, which means what? They have more time to do more work. Maybe that's not the answer when it comes to mental. And I heard this from a customer, and it really resonated with me very well. What about that time is given back to them to breathe, to talk to their partners they don't get a chance to talk about business issues that they're having, right? To get them home on time, right? Yet you're still delivering to the business the efficiency, the expectations that the customer expect, and those margins and the efficiencies that you want as a business owner. So I think reimagining it and thinking about mental health awareness to the technician is a big opportunity to offset the stigma of technology and not only promote the mental awareness improvement for the employees, but think about that when it comes to retention and recruiting to an organization.
Absolutely. If you sent any shockwaves out there, I think they were worth sending out. That's an extremely relevant point, and along with mental health, safety, they can and perhaps should be uh, equally treated in terms of importance and the possibilities that they bring here.
Yeah.
Great point. And I want to open it up. We've been getting some questions as well. As you were talking about this, how how the data gets utilized. One of the things that we see is the diversity in not just the customer, but those that are going to be consuming, utilizing the data. Are there any best practices that perhaps Aquant has identified, or how you approach the fact that those consuming the data will have different styles, different needs, different backgrounds, and how do you get over that?
I have an opinion, and it's my opinion, but I think it comes with a tremendous expertise and experience, that it's our job as a partner in the business to help ease the journey, to help maximize the impact. And I think, yes, we're inevitably going to find different approaches, different organizations, different ways of doing things. But I think no one can argue what makes sense. And what makes sense typically is defining what the business is trying to solve. And if you can help the customer define that, what is a business? There's companies that will accept it because the directive is we must incorporate AI. Okay, then you need to ask internally, if I'm going to do that, what is it going to do for my business? What problem am I going to solve? I think it's critically important to organizations to define that, because us as a partner will help you show where we can improve on that initiative. But without that specificity of what problem you're trying to solve, it could be very overwhelming and very time consuming with the lack of returning value. So I think the specificity of defining your problem, what you're going after, and allowing technology and partners like ourselves to help you get there is very critical.
Great answer. And you triggered another thought, which is along with the understanding of objectives, it's what actually, how do we actually define the intelligence when it comes to the customers or the stakeholders that then we engage with? And very simple example that we had our advisory board before we kicked off the event, and within that there was a short exercise where everybody wrote down their challenges, and then people within the table had to map what everybody wrote to who had said each one of these things. And it was not as easy as you would have imagined, right? There was a lot of, were some people getting 4 or 5 guesses. There were a couple who didn't receive any guesses of I believe you said this. And the takeaway from that was it's not enough to have good data at hand, but we also need to understand our customers. We need to understand the people that we're engaging with, if they're internal customers, if they're the ones that are going to be delivering the service, so that we put the right information to them, so that we know what do they actually care about. And that is very hard to do at scale if we don't have the right mechanisms in place. To me, that's one of the takeaways from what you've said and the possibilities that AI and that brings to the table, is knowing what you need to do and what is your North Star, but also the possibility of doing this at scale in a reliable manner, in a cost efficient manner. So these are a couple of summary points from what I gathered today. And as we get into those benefits, so I believe in the value proposition that comes from this. A lot of our peers do as well, but it is still not straightforward to convince everybody in the organization about we should invest in data. We should invest in translating data into intelligence, into the mechanisms that allow us to utilize that data and put it into workflows, into decision-making processes. And when we ask service leaders, how complicated is it for you to demonstrate to your organization that you need to invest in some dedicated resources in order to shift left, in particular, and be more efficient? On a scale of 0 to 100, removing the best performers, the complexity is 75 out of 100. Even if we include everybody, the top performers, and there's a big jump there, the score is above 60 out of 100. So this is an important question. And do you have any advice on how to communicate this benefits to the larger organizations? What approaches can be taken?
Yeah, I think, the broad ecosystem, the organization, the value, I think it's important that when organizations are considering or in the process of going down this journey, it's really getting down to the technician level of the value of what it's going to do for the business. I think it's so critical that we often overlook. We just think we're helping the technicians by this technology is going to help improve my service business. I look at it this way. If you can breed or help breed the mindset within an organization that this tool or technology that we're incorporating into our business will not only help you efficiency, we talked about mental health awareness, it's going to help us ensure that the services that we provide differentiate us from the competition because we're augmenting our services with technology. And what does that do for the business? It really enables you to secure that renewal, right? It really gets that customer to understand, wow, this vendor, this manufacturer, this OEM that I'm using for my process really has my best interest in mind. And I see them using the best technologies, right? What does that do for renewals? What does that do for growth? And I think if you can sell that growth and retention piece to the technicians, that it's important to use this because it will help us retain and grow our business and provide more opportunity for others. That's going to help top line and bottom line, right? And I think when you start bringing that business acumen to the technician, not just to leave them at a technical acumen, but a broader financial accountability and responsibility as an organization, it's important that they understand it from that perspective. So it's less about the negative stigma about reducing my value. It's more about how we're going to retain and grow our business. And if you can install that mindset into our technicians, the organization at that level, it's a big win.
Yeah, great insights, great answer, Sidney. Thank you for that. And as we're approaching the end, are there any gotcha elements that organizations tend to miss when leveraging shift left? Is either if there's something that I haven't answered that you'd like to share with the audience, or just some summarizing some of your key thoughts from today?
No, it's a good one, Jero. Thanks for asking. We kind of touched on shift left throughout our conversation. Just to remind everyone what it is, right? I always put my hands up because I talk with my hands a lot, but it's reducing escalations into first-time fix. It's reducing first-time fix into the call center to potentially a chatbot on your website. All you're doing is taking costs down, right? By shifting left and getting equipment uptime faster. And I think the gotcha that you asked is the differentiator is not just going down the journey to implement a shift left strategy and the tools that help you get there. It's when you get to that bottom of that curve, that shift left analysis. It's taking a step back and looking at all those buckets, the escalations, the failed first visits, the failed first resolution on the call, the abandonment rate, if you will, like we said, that friction piece of customers not having their answers, resolved with a chatbot. Why did all those happen? And then when you get down to that bottom, that left of that curve, what can we do in our next revision of our product or our next launch of our product that would prevent that escalation? That's the big gotcha. I think if organizations can take and harness this data less reactively and say, what can we do in terms of not just the next revision of the product, but training, right? What can we do so our technicians solve it better the next time? That's the big gotcha. That bottom left, that understanding that journey shifting left, what can we do different next time is the big gotcha.
I love that answer. Very very complete and very tangible. And to let it breathe a little bit, this is less of a question than a comment, but I think it's important to highlight the way that you described AI, that it is not it is not a replacement. It is this augmentation of the agents, and that is in line with everything that you've shared today, and that seems to be really the way that we get over the hurdles of adoption and of fear that are natural when there's not a clarity of how is a new technology going to impact my day to day. Is it going to help or is it going to hurt? I think these are the conversations that we need to have, and how we take advantage of the possibilities.
Absolutely.
So say the you you've shared a wealth of knowledge and experience here with us today, and I appreciate you for it. Um, why don't we to wrap us up? Why don't you share a little bit about yourself? Perhaps a passion project that you have, or just something that is in your near term that you'd like to share with the audience.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Appreciate the personal closing here. For those that know me, I'm a foodie. I talk about food all the time. So um, I look forward to many more cooking events. For those, I live in Chicagoland area. I grill on charcoal probably 3 days a week, and I look forward to enjoying family time by providing them great food, and look forward to the fall weather and bonfires, and just enjoying life when you're not working. So yeah, thanks for the question.
That's great, and I hope you have a great time at it. So thank you very much again, Sydney. Uh, very insightful, very illuminating conversation. Thank you to Aquant for being a partner to the Service Council and what you bring to the community, including your participation at our event. And for our audience, just a quick reminder: the podcast is was recorded, so it is going to be available briefly in all of your platforms if you want to revisit any of the content. And we look forward to seeing you in our next iteration. Have a great day.
Really, really appreciate you having me here, Jero. Thank you so much.